If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
If you've been a long-time listener, and I mean a long-time listener, you know we've been talking about hope and horror since the first episode we recorded. So I'm pleased to announce that this is the first episode of a new column called Hope and Horror with Paul Jessup. You may have heard Paul on our podcast several times before, including with Todd A. Thompson. Check back a few months for those. Before I continue, I just want to remind you that if you like what you hear, please share us with your friends. Anyway, in this episode, Paul goes head on into the topic of hope and horror, discussing the show Yellow Jackets. Paul is a critically acclaimed, award-winning writer of spooky stuff. His latest books are Glass House, a haunted house novel, The Skinless Man Counts to Five and Other Tales of the Macabre, and Daughter of the Wormwood Star, a horror novel about a satanic cult. He has been published and translated in many different countries, including England, Ireland, Poland, and Japan. He is a pro member of the HWA, and he's had publications in countless magazines over the years, including... Hey, what's that weird noise? Can anyone else hear that, or is that my imagination?
Do not panic. Do not adjust your headphones. There is nothing wrong with your computer or cell phone. We have taken over this podcast, but do not be alarmed. We are here to talk to you about hope and horror. Hello, I'm your host Paul Jessup, stepping in for a little bit to discuss some light in our collective darkness. Some people would say that hope is anathema to horror, but I would disagree. Horror is a complicated thing, and a very big tent that can fit all sorts of shapes and shadows. Hope doesn't limit horror, but instead expands it. What does this mean? Well, I hope we can figure it all out together as we go through our little interstitial podcast series. Does it mean that we can't have downbeat endings that drop the bottom out from our world? Of course not. Does it mean we can't have brutal stories that tear us apart emotionally? No, all that stuff is key to horror, as it is to hope. One does not negate the other, and just because the ending is dark and gut-wrenching does not remove hope that exists in the cracks of the story. We tend to focus on endings, especially in horror, to determine the shape of our entire narrative. I think that's a strange thing to do, to be honest. An ending is the only final note in the whole piece. Yes, it is the note that vibrates in our heart afterwards the longest. But there's still so much more that exists before that moment. Novels and movies and short stories are complicated, messy things, and are far more than just their endings. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, what do we mean when we say hope and horror? Well, let's begin. Our first episode here is going to be about one of my favorite recent TV series. We're in a golden age of horror TV, that's for certain. So many great shows. What I'm talking about today is Yellow Jackets. Have you heard about this? I'm sure you have. It's an excellent show, and if you have the time, you should sit down and watch it. Now, I'll be giving away some spoilers here for the end of the second season, and I apologize in advance for that. But if you don't plan on seeing the show, don't mind spoilers, or you've already seen it and want to know more, I hope you stick around and hear me out, because we're going to talk about Episode 7 of Season 2, also known as Burial. Yes, we're going there. It's a pivotal moment, and access to the whole show turns on. Or, to put it another way, it's a keystone episode, and if you take it out, everything collapses. And most importantly, it is the penultimate scene. If you watch the show already, you know what I'm talking about here. Probably stuck in your mind like a ragged shadow, and you're unable to shake it, even now. But there is a healing in that echoes of trauma, you'll see. I can feel it coming back again, like thunder chasing the wind. Forces moving to the center of the earth again. I can feel it. You know the song. You're even singing in your head, aren't you? Oh, yes, you are. That was the scene I'm talking about. and the song perfectly captures the power and the beauty of this moment. Each song of this episode seems to be chosen in that way, to move towards a crescendo of light and hope out of darkness of the past. The episode starts with Something in the Way by Nirvana, and Shauna is bearing her stillborn child, a trauma that they all share in that moment. Her child had just died during a terrible blizzard, where they all snowed in and unable to leave. And at the start of the show, the snow stops. This thing that had terrified them and killed one of them, and now it was gone. And in that very same snow, she buries the child that almost was. This is the earthquake at the heart of the two seasons, the lingering ghost that haunts to the present day. It seems more than cannibalism or the supernatural or the face being mauled up by wolves. This moment of death that shouldn't have been lingers. It causes so many clashes in the past, while the timeline skips to present day, a crescendo of angst and violence and anger in a world that would let such a thing happen. There, in the past, people blamed each other, suspicions abound. Misty, the girl that had the most medical training, was the one who failed to deliver the child, and it haunts her, even more than the Frenchies murdered. The murder haunts her in different ways, in regret, but also further points the finger at Misty. It also points the finger at everyone else. The starving group of teenage survivors who ate one of their friends, someone who died in the snow, perished in the cold. The funeral pyres smelled too sweet, and in that moment they imagined themselves as royalty, feasting in an illusion. Another thing that haunts their soccer coach and keeps him at a distance, distrusting them. It was a moment that was necessary to survive, and yet the horror of it lingers. To the point where Shauna suspects they killed and ate her baby, that it hadn't died of natural causes. This is the culmination of the episode and the entire season altogether. And all this time it moves back and forth through time. The present day is 30 years later. The cannibal past was in the 90s, hence the musical accompaniment. In the present day, they still have this seething animosity between them, but also this desire to be together. They feel more real and raw when they are together. Even though it is dangerous, people die, children die, they devoured some of the dead. The ghosts of their past haunt them in the present with sharp echoes. In the present day, they try and come to terms with their demons, and in the end, they realize how much they'd forgotten. So much, the trauma and ecstasy keeping their greater demons at bay. And there, they sit around a fire in the present day, drinking and talking and listening to music. And the song Lightning Crashes comes on the radio. Misty says it's starting to snow, and they all smile, happy to see it, which mirrors the terror of the snow in the previous episodes, and the relief of the snow stopping at the start of this episode. Here, the snow of the past and the snow of the present create a bookend of trauma, leading to hope. But first, a history lesson for those of you who didn't grow up in the go-go 90s. Even though the band live is mostly forgotten today, they had a few hits back in the day. Lightning Crashes was pretty much the main one, and it was everywhere. MTV played it nonstop, and it was both catchy and oddly morose and spiritual. It also sounded so different than a lot of other else was popular at the time. Poppy with a bit of grunge and metal, but more melodic. Maybe a promise of things to come with Tool and System of a Down. The song? When the lead singer was at the hospital to visit his dying grandma, he heard the sounds of children crying down the hall from the pregnancy ward. He realized that even though she was dying, so many other new lives were starting at that very same moment. The whole song is about that, about one person dying so another could live and be born. Back in the day, there were rumors that it was about the mother of the child dying in the song. Obviously, the lead singer came out and said that wasn't the case at all, but this rumor is very important to the story, as you'll see. So, in the present day, the song comes on the radio and they turn it up. Shauna says she loves the song and starts dancing. Remember, this is the Shauna in the past, 30 years ago, who lost her child. Then it flashes back to that same past. And it keeps doing this, by the way, like a strobe light effect, synchronized to the song. In the past, Misty, that Misty who Shauna thinks murdered and ate her baby, began to hum that very same song, Lightning Crashes. The same song they're listening to in the present day. And the Shauna of the past loses it. She hits her, tells her to stop singing it, that she knew that Misty killed and ate her baby. The subtext of the song, all those rumors about mothers dying for the daughters to live, it feels like a knife in Shauna's gut. Should she have died for her baby to live? We know Misty did everything she could to try and save the infant, so far from the hospital. It was a rare moment of tenderness for a character that was unhinged and close to being a serial killer throughout the series. And so, this moment of vulnerability hits us hard. Again, it flashes back to the present day, and they all start singing along, dancing. The trauma seems to slowly fade away behind them again, through their communion of conversation and music. And then back to the past, Lottie, who is a mystic and considers herself gifted and with the voice of some pagan god, walks forward, places her hands behind her back, and tells Shauna to attack her, to let it all out. Let her be the sacrificial goat. And they all stand and watch as Shauna lets out all of her anger, directly in time to the song, which crescendos upwards, beautifully terrifying. And in the present day, they all dance together, singing, laughing, drinking some more. As in the past, Shauna beats Lottie to bloody pulp, her face swollen, spitting up blood. It is so very hard to watch this scene, so brutal and horrible and raw. But we have to watch. We can't look away, even as each punch and kick flips forward in time with them dancing and singing some more. The song in the present day making them happy, while all the brutality of the past lingers on. And when Shauna is done, Lottie is unrecognizable. She looks dead. Her face is swollen. Her eyes are swollen shut. She spits up blood. She should have died. Shauna goes outside, pushes her knuckles into the snow to cool the torn and ripped skin from the beating she'd placed on Lottie. And in the present day, they laugh and hug each other. Old friends brought together by the song. The very same song that caused so much violence in the past and now heals them and makes them whole. Just like the snow of the past was an element of trauma and an element of joy in the present day. This, my friends, is hope in horror. That the very things that terrify us can also heal us and set us free. And I'm going to leave you all here for now and let the podcast return back to normal. Think about what I've said and let me know how you experience hope in horror and if it mirrors what we've talked about already. Until the next time, may the darkness shine bright and the shadows set you free.